Today I'm going to show you how to make homemade caramel apples. Begin by taking your apples. You can use whatever apples that you want. I really love using Granny Smith, and I washed them in hot water, just rinsed them really well, and then I dried them. Alright, make sure you get the stems out as best as you can, and then you want to take some kind of a treat stick, and I'm just going to stick this in here about halfway or so. See? So I'm just going to put these here on my pan just so it's easier to transport, and I have it lined with a silicone mat, and that's going to be important later after we dip them. Time to make the caramel. Begin with 2 cups of light or dark brown sugar, it doesn't matter. 1/4 cup of butter, and that could be salted or unsalted. If you're using salted, then just half the additional salt. This is 1/2 teaspoon of salt, so you use about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then 1.5 cups of heavy whipping cream. And I have it in a 3-quart pot. You want it to be at least a 3-quart pot because it's deep enough. Don't do it in like a skillet because it's going to bubble up while it cooks, and you don't want it to bubble over. And then I have a cup of light corn syrup. Over here on the stovetop, I have the burner set to in between medium, low, and medium, and we want to keep stirring this until the butter melts. And we want to heat this up to the softball stage, which is right around 235 Fahrenheit, 240, in between 235 and 240 Fahrenheit. Okay, once the butter is melted all the way, then we can stop stirring and we'll just let it sit and do its thing for about 10-15 minutes. And it's going to start to bubble. And what we're going to need to do is on the sides, if you can see, there's some sugar and things that have shown up on the sides, and we don't want that. And so what we want to do is take some water and a little brush, and we'll just lightly brush down that sugar. Because if that gets burnt on the sides there, it can ruin the caramel. Sometimes it's not an issue, so just keep an eye on it. All right, we are right there at the softball stage, 235 Fahrenheit, about 113, 112 Celsius. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the heat. I'm going to take the pot off the heat. And now I'm going to pour in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and just stir that into the caramel. I'm not going to stir really vigorously. I don't want to add in any unnecessary bubbles into the caramel. And then you let your caramel cool to 190 Fahrenheit. And I just poured it into this bowl. It just makes it easier to dip, but you can certainly just keep it in the pot if you want. And then take an apple and we will go straight down into it. And you can cover the top as much as you want. And then come out. Look at that. Awesome. And then we're going to let some of it drip off. And then I like to scrape off kind of the excess on the bottom. And then you can go up the top of the apple just a little bit, because gravity is going to let the others drip down a bit. And this way you'll have a little bit less of a pool that forms on the bottom. And then I'm just going to put it right here on a silicone mat on a sheet pan, but parchment paper works really well. And then here is a closer look, again, into the caramel. You're getting the idea. Scrape off some of the bottom. I'm going to come in over here to these nuts, and this is just the little mixed nuts that I got. And you could use peanuts, pecans, and I just kind of push them in there, and then there it goes. All right, these look fantastic. This recipe, you'll be able to dip probably 8 to 10 apples depending on the size. I only showed 6 here, and then into the refrigerator it goes for about an hour. And then if you have leftover caramel, most likely you'll have some leftover caramel, I'm going to pour it into this baking pan lined with a piece of parchment paper, and I lightly sprayed that parchment paper with some kitchen spray. That's not totally necessary. The parchment paper will be fine as it is. And I'm just gonna make some little soft caramels out of this. Get all that caramel out of the bowl. We don't want to waste any of it. It's super yummy, super, super delicious. And then I'm just gonna put this in the fridge for about 30 minutes to an hour. And when they come out of the fridge, they'll look something like this. Notice there's hardly any pooling at all at the bottom. This one just has a little bit. And then just let them sit for about 10 to 15 minutes at room temperature. While you can bite into these, when the caramel softens, your dentist will thank you if you just cut it. And so we'll just cut this down the core here. I just cut it up into some pieces. Plus, it's a lot easier to eat if you just do it this way. Maybe not as fun. And always cut with the caramel side up. That way the caramel doesn't stick to your cutting board. And then you can dip them in chocolate if you want. Also, I want to mention, you could take this caramel apple and you could dip it in chocolate. You could do drizzle chocolate on there. You could drizzle like some chocolate and put sprinkles on there. A lot of different designs that you can play with. And then with your leftover caramel, then you'll just want to come in here and you'll just cut it into little pieces if you want. And you may need to, depending on how hard it is, you may need to let it sit at room temperature for a little bit first. There you go, and then you could individually wrap them if you wanted to. There's specific caramel wrappers that you can get, candy wrappers, or you can just leave them like this. You don't want to stack them, they'll kind of stick to each other if you do that. Or you can just leave it flat like this. Totally up to you. And that is how you make homemade caramel apples from scratch and some bonus soft caramel candies. Take care. Time for me to dive into this. Oh yeah. Mmm.